My name is Cassandra, and at 29, I never expected to be fighting my entire family over a house. For 10 years, I visited Grandma Eleanor every single Sunday, while my sister Amanda couldn't be bothered. When Grandma passed and left me her Victorian home, I thought everyone would understand why. I was wrong. At the will reading, my dad actually stood up and said, "Sign it over to your sister. She needs it more than you." Nobody expected what I did next. Before I tell you what was in that letter, Grandma left me drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and subscribe if you've ever had family. Try to take advantage of your kindness. Growing up, I always had a special connection with my grandmother. Grandma Eleanor wasn't just family, she was my best friend, my confidant, and the one person who truly saw me for who I was. From the time I was little, I would spend weekends at her beautiful Victorian house, helping her bake snickerdoodle cookies from her secret recipe, learning how to tend to her magnificent garden full of hydrangeas and roses, and listening to stories about her youth during more simple times. When I started nursing school, those weekend visits became our sacred Sunday routine. Every week, without fail, I would arrive at her house at 11 hours in the morning. We would cook lunch together, usually her famous pot roast or chicken and dumplings, and then spend the afternoon either working in the garden or sitting on her wraparound porch, drinking sweet tea and talking about everything and nothing. During winter months, we would sit by her fireplace wrapped in the handmade quilts she had crafted over the years and read books together or watch old movies on her ancient television set. For 10 whole years, I never missed a Sunday unless I was deathly ill. Even then, I would call to check in. Those Sundays were sacred to me. They were my stability in an otherwise chaotic world of hospital shifts and demanding patients. Grandma Eleanor was my anchor, my safe harbor. My sister Amanda, on the other hand, could barely be bothered to call Grandma on holidays. 3 years younger than me, Amanda had always been the family favorite, despite her complete lack of responsibility or consideration for others. Where I worked hard through nursing school, Amanda dropped out of college 3 separate times, each venture funded fully by our parents. Where I held down the same job at Memorial Hospital for 7 years, Amanda bounced between retail positions, waitressing gigs, and multi-level marketing schemes, never lasting more than a few months at any of them. "I'm finding myself," she would declare, whenever anyone questioned her life choices. By 32, her only consistent achievement was consistently disappointing everyone who counted on her. Our parents enabled this behavior at every turn. When Amanda couldn't make rent, they paid it. When she maxed out credit cards, they settled the debt. When she needed a car after wrecking her previous one while texting, they bought her a new one. Meanwhile, I put myself through school, bought my modest Honda with my own savings, and rented a small but clean 1-bedroom apartment 15 minutes from the hospital where I worked. The pattern was always the same. Amanda would create chaos, and everyone would expect me to be the bigger person. When Amanda borrowed my prom dress and returned it stained, I was told to let it go. When she borrowed money from my graduation fund, I was told family helps family. When she showed up 3 hours late to my nursing school graduation because she was hungover, I was expected to understand because that's just how Amanda is. Grandma Eleanor was the only one who saw through this dynamic. "You know, Cassie," she told me once while we were planting tulip bulbs for next spring, "being the reliable one is both a blessing and a curse. People take advantage of those they know won't let them down." She looked at me with those wise blue eyes that seemed to see straight into my soul. "Just remember that your worth isn't measured by how much you give to people who only take." When Grandma's health began to decline last year, there was never any question about who would step up. I took family and medical leave from the hospital to care for her in her final months. I administered her medications, drove her to doctor appointments, cooked meals that would tempt her failing appetite, and sat with her through long nights when pain kept her awake. I read to her when her eyesight became too poor for her to read herself, and I helped her write letters to old friends she wanted to say goodbye to. Amanda visited exactly once during those 3 months. She stayed for 45 minutes, spent most of that time on her phone, and left early because she had plans. Our parents visited more frequently, but always with the unspoken expectation that I would handle the difficult parts of caregiving. When Grandma Eleanor passed peacefully in her sleep with me holding her hand, I felt a piece of my heart break off. At the funeral, Amanda cried dramatically, telling anyone who would listen how close she and Granny Elle had been. I was too grief-stricken to call her out on her performance. The tension in the family was immediate. The day after the funeral, my mother called to ask if Grandma had talked about her will. "Amanda's really counting on getting some help," she said, not even trying to be subtle. "You know how tight things are for her right now. I honestly didn't know what Grandma had planned. We had never discussed her will or inheritance. Our time together had been about living, not preparing for her death. All I knew was that whatever happened, the loss of her presence in my life would leave a void that no material possession could ever fill. Little did I know that my grandmother's final act would force me to finally stand up for myself against the family that had taken me for granted for so long." The will reading was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon at Mr. Harrington's law office, downtown. I arrived 15 minutes early, my hands clutching a tissue and my heart heavy with grief. The office was all dark wood and leather chairs, the kind of place that had probably looked exactly the same for the past 50 years. I chose a seat near the window, watching raindrops race down the glass, and trying to prepare myself emotionally for whatever was about to happen. My parents arrived next, my father in his one good suit that he wore to weddings and funerals, and my mother in a black dress that made her look pale and drawn. They both hugged me briefly before taking seats across the room, whispering to each other in the way they always did when they were strategizing something. Amanda arrived last 10 minutes late with her boyfriend Troy in tow. I was surprised she'd brought him since he'd never even met Grandma Eleanor. He was her latest soulmate in a long line of questionable relationships. Troy had a sleeve of tattoos and worked sporadically as a bartender. They'd been dating for 4 months, and Amanda had already moved into his apartment with her 3 kids from 2 previous relationships. Amanda barely acknowledged me, instead pulling out her phone and immediately starting to text her long acrylic nails clicking against the screen. Her attitude made it clear this was a chore she wanted to get over with as quickly as possible. Mr. Harrington entered precisely at 2:05, carrying a folder and wearing glasses that kept sliding down his nose. "Thank you all for coming today," he began formally. "We're here to discuss the last will and testament of Eleanor Margaret Wilson. Before I begin, I'd like to express my personal condolences. Eleanor was a client of mine for over 30 years, and I considered her a friend as well." He opened the folder and began to read the formal legal language of the will. Small personal items were distributed among various family members. My mother received Grandma's pearl necklace and some antique jewelry. My father got her collection of first edition books that he had always admired. Various cousins and my Aunt Susan were mentioned for smaller bequests. Then Mr. Harrington cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. "To my granddaughter, Cassandra Lynn Wilson, who has been my constant companion and support, who has given me the gift of her time and love without expectation of return. I leave my house at 247 Maple Street with all its contents, otherwise specifically bequeathed, as well as the sum of $75,000 from my savings." The room went completely silent. I felt tears welling in my eyes, not because of the inheritance, but because of the words Grandma had chosen to describe our relationship. Additionally, Mr. Harrington continued to my granddaughter, Amanda Jean Wilson. "I leave the sum of $10,000 with the hope that she will use it wisely to secure a stable future for her children." Amanda's head snapped up from her phone, her expression shifting from boredom to outrage in an instant. "That's it," she practically spat. $10,000. The old lady was sitting on a gold mine with that house, and I get pocket change. "Amanda," my mother gasped, though. Whether she was shocked by the outburst or the amount, I couldn't tell. Mr. Harrington continued reading as if there had been no interruption going through some charitable donations Grandma had arranged. When he finished and closed the folder, my father stood up abruptly. "There must be some mistake," he said, his voice tight with anger. Eleanor knew that Amanda has 3 children and is struggling financially. Cassandra is single with a good job. This distribution makes no sense. Mr. Harrington removed his glasses. "I assure you, Mr. Wilson, your mother was of sound mind when she made these arrangements. We reviewed the will multiple times, and she was very clear about her wishes." My father turned to me, then his face flushed. "Cassandra, you need to do the right thing here. Sign the house over to your sister. She needs it more than you do." I sat there in shock, unable to process what was happening. We were supposed to be mourning Grandma, remembering her life, honoring her wishes. Instead, this had immediately turned into a fight over her possessions. Dad, I don't think I started to say, but Amanda cut me off. You already have an apartment, she snapped. What do you need a 4-bedroom house for? I have 3 kids crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment with Troy. You're being selfish, my mother joined in her voice, taking on the guilt-inducing tone she had perfected over the years. Honey, your sister has Lily, Jaden, and Mason to think about. They need a stable home. You know, your grandmother would want those children to have a good place to grow up. I looked around the room in disbelief. Troy was now standing with his arms crossed, looking at me like I was some kind of monster. My Aunt Susan and Cousin Beth, who had been quiet until now, exchanged uncomfortable glances. This isn't the time or place for this discussion. Mr. Harrington intervened clearly. Uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding in his office, the will is legal and binding. If you have concerns about its validity, you're welcome to contest it in court. Though I must advise you that Eleanor took every precaution to ensure her wishes would be respected. My father dismissed this with a wave of his hand. We don't need courts. We're family. Cassandra knows what the right thing to do is. He fixed me with a stern look that took me right back to childhood, when his disapproval was the worst punishment imaginable. Cousin Beth spoke up suddenly. I think we should all take some time to process this. It's only been a week since we lost Aunt Eleanor. Maybe we should table this discussion for now. Amanda shot her a venomous look. Easy for you to say when you're not the one living paycheck to paycheck with 3 kids to feed. As the arguing continued around me, I felt like I was underwater. Sounds muffled and movement slowed. This was not how I expected today to go. Part of me wanted to stand up and scream that Grandma Eleanor had made her choices, for a reason that I had been there for her when no one else was. But another part, the people-pleasing part that had been conditioned since childhood to keep the peace at all costs, was already calculating how to give in without completely losing myself in the process. Mr. Harrington ended the meeting when it became clear nothing productive would come from continuing. As we filed out of his office, my mother caught my arm. We expect you to come to dinner on Friday, she said, her voice leaving no room for refusal. We'll discuss the transfer details then. I nodded numbly and watched them leave Amanda, already loudly complaining to Troy about how unfair everything was. I stood alone in the parking lot, rain soaking through my thin jacket, feeling more isolated than I ever had before. The days following the will reading were a blur of emotional warfare. My phone buzzed constantly with texts and calls from family members, each one adding to the growing weight on my shoulders. My mother called every morning before my shift at the hospital and every evening after I got home, her tactics alternating between guilt trips and angry demands. Your sister cried herself to sleep last night. She informed me on Wednesday. She's worried sick about where the kids are going to live if their landlord follows through on the rent increase. On Thursday, I just don't understand how you can be so selfish after everything your father and I have done for you. By Friday morning, she had escalated to, your grandmother would be ashamed of your behavior. She raised you better than this. That one cut deep. I found myself sitting in my car in the hospital parking lot, sobbing uncontrollably until a concerned coworker knocked on my window to check if I was okay. I plastered on the fake smile I was becoming too good at and assured her I was fine, just allergies acting up. My father's approach was more direct. He called only once, his voice carrying the stern authority that had always made both Amanda and me snap to attention as children. This family has always taken care of its own, he said, without preamble when I answered. Your mother and I sacrificed everything to give you girls the best life possible. Now it's time for you to do your part. Amanda needs this house, Cassandra. It's not a request. Meanwhile, Amanda launched a social media campaign that made my stomach turn. Without naming me directly, she posted tearful updates about selfish people who don't care about family, and having to explain to my babies why they might not have a yard to play in because someone who lives alone needs a 4-bedroom house all to herself. Her friends commented with outrage on her behalf, many of them people I had known since high school, all of them seeing only Amanda's carefully curated version of events. The most brutal tactic came on Thursday evening, when I arrived home to find Amanda, Troy, and all 3 children waiting outside my apartment door. Aunt Cassie, 7-year-old Lily, cried, running to hug me around the waist. Despite everything, I felt my heart melt a little. None of this was the kids' fault. "We thought you might want to spend some time with the niece and nephews you're making homeless," Amanda said loudly enough for my neighbors to hear a fake smile plastered on her face. I invited them in, acutely aware of how small my apartment was with 5 extra people in it. 5-year-old Jaden immediately began touching everything in sight, while 2-year-old Mason clung to Troy's leg, looking uncertain. "Kids, go explore Aunt Cassie's place, while the grown-ups talk," Amanda instructed, and the children scattered Lily, heading straight for my bedroom. Once they were out of earshot, Amanda's smile disappeared. "This is ridiculous, Cassie. Look at this place. It's perfect for one person. What are you going to do with Grandma's big house? Rattle around in it all by yourself while my kids are crammed into a moldy apartment with paper-thin walls." "I haven't even decided what I'm doing yet," I protested weakly. "Everything's happened so fast." Troy, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Amanda told me how you always were the favorite growing up. Got all the attention, all the opportunities. Maybe it's time you thought about someone besides yourself for once." I stared at him speechless. This was so far from the reality of our childhood that I didn't even know how to respond. Was this really what Amanda had told him? That she was the neglected one? The visit lasted an excruciating hour, during which Jaden managed to knock over and break a ceramic vase. My nursing school friends had given me at graduation, and Mason had a diaper blowout on my couch. Neither Amanda nor Troy made any move to clean up either mess. As they were leaving, Amanda paused at the door. "Mom and Dad expect us for dinner tomorrow night. Don't be late, and maybe by then you'll have come to your senses." The pressure wasn't just coming from my immediate family. Aunt Susan called to just check in, but quickly turned the conversation to how Amanda has always struggled. Poor thing. And how sharing our blessings is what family does. Uncle Robert texted that I should do right by your sister because blood is thicker than water. The only person who reached out without an agenda was my cousin Beth. She called on Friday afternoon as I was getting ready for the dreaded family dinner. "How are you holding up?" she asked, genuine concern in her voice. "Honestly, not great," I admitted. Relieved to finally be able to tell someone the truth, I figured Beth sighed. "Look, I know everyone's pressuring you, but you need to know that not all of us think you should give up the house. Grandma Eleanor left it to you for a reason." "You think so?" I asked, embarrassed by how small my voice sounded. "I know so. I saw how you were with her, Cassie. Every Sunday for years, and then moving practically into her house when she got sick. Amanda showing up once in 3 months and then crying at the funeral like they were best friends. It was gross." Beth's validation brought fresh tears to my eyes. "I don't know what to do, Beth. They're making me feel like I'm this horrible, selfish person." "That's because they know you'll cave if they push hard enough," Beth said bluntly. "You always do. Look, whatever you decide, make sure it's because it's what you want, not because they bullied you into it." After we hung up, I found myself driving to Grandma Eleanor's house, my house now legally, if not emotionally. I hadn't been back since before the funeral, and pulling into the driveway felt surreal. The garden was already starting to look neglected. The rose bushes needed pruning, and the porch had a scatter of dead leaves that Grandma would never have tolerated. I used the key that had been given to me at the will reading and stepped inside. The house smelled like Grandma, a mixture of lavender old books and the lemon polish she used on the antique furniture. I moved through the room, slowly trailing my fingers over familiar surfaces. In the kitchen, her apron still hung on the hook by the pantry. In the living room, her reading glasses lay on the side table next to her favorite armchair, a bookmark still protruding from the mystery novel she would never finish. Standing in her bedroom doorway, looking at the neatly made bed with its hand-stitched quilt, I felt her absence like a physical ache. But I also felt something else, a growing certainty that Grandma Eleanor had known exactly what she was doing when she left me this house. She hadn't done it to cause family strife or to play favorites. She had done it because this house had been filled with love between us, and she wanted that love to continue after she was gone. As I left, locking the door behind me, I felt torn between the loyalty I felt to Grandma's wishes and the lifetime of conditioning that told me keeping the peace was my responsibility. I got in my car and headed to my parents' house for dinner, still unsure of what I would do, but feeling the first stirrings of a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 6:30. the time my mother had specified. The familiar colonial where Amanda and I had grown up looked the same as always, with its blue shutters and neatly trimmed hedges. My father's Buick was in the driveway, along with Amanda's perpetually messy SUV. As I parked behind them, I took a deep breath, trying to prepare myself for what I knew would be an ambush disguised as a family dinner. The moment I walked through the front door, the tension hit me like a physical force. My mother was in the kitchen aggressively chopping vegetables while my father sat at the dining room table, a stack of papers in front of him. Amanda was nowhere to be seen, but I could hear her voice upstairs, probably on the phone. "There she is," my father said, not getting up. "We were beginning to think you might not show." "I said I would be here," I replied, hanging my jacket on the coat rack. "Where are the kids?" "Troy took them to his mother's for the night," my mother called from the kitchen. "We thought it would be better to have an adult conversation without distractions." Translation: they didn't want witnesses to whatever they had planned. Dinner was a tense affair. My mother had made pot roast my favorite, which immediately put me on edge. She only made my favorite meals when she wanted something significant. We ate in strange silence for several minutes before my father cleared his throat. "Cassandra, your mother and I have been thinking about this situation with Grandma's house." He began using his reasonable voice that always preceded something unreasonable. "We understand you might be attached to the place because of your relationship with your grandmother, but we need to look at this practically." I took a bite of pot roast to avoid responding immediately. "The fact is," he continued, "Amanda has 3 children and no stable housing situation. You're single with a good career and already have a place to live. It just makes sense for Amanda to have the house. Not to mention," my mother chimed in, "Amanda could really use the financial security. If she had the house, she wouldn't have to worry about rent. She could focus on finding a good job and providing for the children." I set down my fork. "Amanda has had 10 years to find a good job." "Mom, what makes you think having Grandma's house will suddenly make her responsible?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "That's unfair, Cassandra," my father said sharply. "Your sister has had some setbacks, but she's trying her best." "Is she?" I asked, surprising myself with the challenge in my voice. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like she spent her entire adult life avoiding responsibility while everyone rushes to bail her out. My mother's face flushed with anger. "How dare you speak about your sister that way? You have no idea what it's like to raise 3 children on your own." "She's not on her own," I pointed out. "She has Troy now, and before that it was Derek, and before that Jason. Not to mention she has you two who have never said no to her about anything." "We've helped both our daughters equally," my father insisted, though we all knew that was a lie. Amanda chose that moment to make her entrance sauntering into the dining room with the timing of someone who had been listening from the hallway. "Talking about me?" she asked with a false brightness. "We're discussing the house situation," my mother said, her tone immediately softening. "Oh, that," Amanda said, dropping into a chair and helping herself to food. "Has she agreed to sign it over yet? Troy's already talking about which bedroom would be best for his home studio." I nearly choked on my water. "His what?" Amanda waved a hand dismissively. "Troy's starting a podcast about craft beer. He needs a quiet space to record." The casual way she said this, as if it were perfectly reasonable to expect me to give up my inheritance so her boyfriend of 4 months could have a podcast studio, left me momentarily speechless. "Actually," my father said, pulling the stack of papers toward him, "I've had the transfer documents drawn up. My friend Bill at the bank helped me with them." He slid the papers across the table toward me along with a pen. "We can take care of this tonight and be done with it." I stared at the documents, my name and Amanda's printed in stark black and white with an empty signature line at the bottom. The presumption of it all hit me like a slap. "You already had papers drawn up?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper without even talking to me first. "We're talking now," my mother said impatiently. "And frankly, Cassandra, I don't understand why this is even a discussion. Your sister needs the house. You don't. It's as simple as that." "Yeah, don't be selfish." Amanda chimed in, her mouth full of pot roast. "It's not like you earned that house anyway. It was just luck that Grandma liked you better." Something inside me snapped. "Luck? You think it was luck that I spent every Sunday with her for 10 years? That I took leave from my job to care for her when she was dying? That I was there holding her hand when she passed, while you couldn't be bothered to visit more than once?" Amanda rolled her eyes. Here we go with the martyr act. You always have to be the perfect one, don't you, Saint Cassandra? So selfless, so caring. That's enough, my father interrupted. This bickering isn't helping anything. Oh, I think it's helping a lot, I said, feeling a strange calm settle over me. It's helping me see things very clearly. Amanda, when was the last time you visited Grandma before she got sick? Do you even remember? Amanda shifted uncomfortably. I was busy with the kids. She understood that. That wasn't what I asked. When was the last time? I don't know. Maybe Christmas 2 years ago. Why does it matter? It matters because you're sitting here claiming you deserve her house when you couldn't spare an hour to visit her in years. And now I find out you've already promised your boyfriend he can turn a bedroom into a podcast studio, my mother interjected. Cassandra, you're being dramatic. The important thing is that the house stays in the family and benefits the most people. 3 children and 2 adults versus just you. The math is simple. Actually, I said, a memory suddenly surfacing. Amanda did visit Grandma one other time that I know of, about 6 months before she got sick. Isn't that right, Amanda? Amanda's face went blank for a moment before her eyes narrowed. I don't know what you're talking about. Grandma told me about it. She said you stopped by unexpectedly on a Tuesday. She was so excited to see you that she made your favorite lemon bars from scratch. But it turned out you weren't there for a visit at all, were you? You needed money because you'd maxed out your credit cards again. That's a lie, Amanda said. But her flushed face told a different story. Grandma offered to help you. I continued the details, coming back clearly now, but she had conditions. You would need to show her a budget and start paying down your debt responsibly. She even offered to pay for financial counseling for you, but you got angry and left without even eating the lemon bars she'd made. She cried when she told me about it. The room went silent. My father looked at Amanda with a question in his eyes, but she avoided his gaze. Is that true? He finally asked. She was trying to control me, Amanda muttered, acting like I was some irresponsible child. Because you are acting like an irresponsible child, I said, my voice rising. You've been acting like an irresponsible child your entire adult life, and everyone in this family has enabled it, including me. Well, I'm done. I stood up, pushing away from the table. Grandma Eleanor left me that house because she knew what would happen if she left it to Amanda. It would be mortgaged to the hilt within a year to pay off debts or sold to fund whatever get-rich-quick scheme she or her boyfriend came up with next. How dare you, my mother gasped. No, how dare all of you, I fired back. Grandma's been gone barely 2 weeks, and instead of honoring her wishes, you're trying to bulldoze over them because it's more convenient for you. Because God forbid Amanda ever face the consequences of her choices? My father stood now too, his face flushed with anger. That's enough, Cassandra. You've made your point. But I want to be very clear about something. Either you sign those papers and do right by your sister, or you are no longer welcome in this family. It's that simple. The ultimatum hung in the air between us, brutal in its finality. I looked at my father's stern face, my mother's tight-lipped disapproval, and Amanda's smug expression. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what my future would look like if I gave in now. A lifetime of being taken advantage of having my boundaries ignored, of being expected to sacrifice my needs for Amanda's wants. Without another word, I picked up my purse and walked out, ignoring my mother's shocked call of Cassandra behind me. I got in my car and drove with no destination in mind, tears streaming down my face as I realized I might have just lost my entire family. I ended up at a small park near my apartment, sitting on a bench in the dark, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed repeatedly with calls and texts from my mother, which I ignored. Eventually, a text from my father came through. Your mother is very upset. When you've calmed down and are ready to be reasonable, call us. Reasonable always. I was expected to be the reasonable one, the one who gave in, who compromised, who put everyone else first. When had anyone in my family ever considered what I wanted or needed? I sat there until well after midnight, the emotional exhaustion of the past 2 weeks finally catching up to me. When I finally went home, I fell into bed fully clothed and slept a deep, dreamless sleep for the first time since Grandma died. I woke the next morning with swollen eyes and a strange sense of calm. As I made my morning coffee, a memory floated into my mind. Something Grandma Eleanor had said to me during one of our last conversations. Cassie, she had said, her voice weak, but her eyes still sharp. I've put something away for you. When the time comes, look in our book. You'll know what to do. Our book? She meant Pride and Prejudice, the novel we had read together countless times over the years. I had brought her copy back to my apartment after she died, unable to part with something that held so many memories of our time together. With trembling hands, I took the worn hard cover from my bookshelf and began carefully flipping through it. At first, I saw nothing unusual, just the familiar pages with Grandma's occasional notes in the margins. Then, as I reached the chapter where Elizabeth Bennet refuses Mr. Darcy's first proposal, always Grandma's favorite part, I found an envelope tucked between the pages. My name was written on the front in Grandma's elegant handwriting. Inside was a letter dated just 2 weeks before she died. With shaking hands, I unfolded the letter and began to read. Me dearest Cassandra, if you're reading this, then I am gone, and you have found yourself in exactly the situation I feared you might. I know your father and mother well, and I know your sister Amanda perhaps better than she realizes. By now, they have likely demanded that you turn over the house to Amanda for the family, and you are torn between honoring my wishes and keeping peace with the people you love. First, I want you to know that the house is yours without conditions or expectations. What you choose to do with it is entirely your decision, and I will not think less of you no matter what you decide. But I hope you will indulge an old woman's last bit of advice. Throughout your life, I have watched you sacrifice your own happiness and needs to keep others content. I've seen you give in to Amanda's demands since you were both small children. I've seen you accept your parents' favoritism without complaint. I've seen you put your own dreams on hold to be there for others who would not do the same for you. Cassie, my sweet girl, your compassion is your greatest strength, but when misused, it becomes your greatest vulnerability. There are people in this world, even people we love, who will take and take until there is nothing left if we allow them to do so. Amanda came to see me last year, not out of concern for my well-being, but because she needed money. When I suggested that I would help her if she would take steps toward financial responsibility, she became angry. She told me that I owed her because I had always favored you. She said that the least I could do was make things fair by giving her money without strings attached. What Amanda fails to understand is that love is not about keeping score or making things even. It's about building relationships based on mutual respect and care. The bond you and I share wasn't created by DNA or obligation. It was built Sunday by Sunday, conversation by conversation, through shared laughter and tears, and the simple gift of your presence in my life. I have left Amanda a sum that I believe is generous, considering our relationship. I have left you my home because you are the one who helped make it a home. Even as my body was failing me, it is my hope that you will fill it with the same love and warmth that you brought to my final years. But more than the house itself, I hope I have left you with the courage to stand firm in your own worth. You do not exist to fix Amanda's problems or to fulfill your parents' expectations. You exist to live your own life with joy and purpose. If they cannot accept your right to the inheritance I have freely given, then perhaps it is time to create some distance, not out of anger or resentment, but out of self-preservation and respect for your own needs. Remember what we read together in Austin. I am only resolved to act in that manner which will, in my own opinion, constitute my happiness. It is time for you to constitute your own happiness, my darling girl, even if others do not understand. I am so proud of the woman you have become, and I am at peace knowing that my home will be in the care of someone who truly loved it and me for all the right reasons. All my love, Grandma Eleanor. By the time I finished reading, tears were streaming down my face, but they were different from the tears of the night before. These were tears of release, of recognition, of a truth I had always known, but had never been brave enough to acknowledge. Grandma Eleanor had seen it all, the pattern of my giving in, of Amanda taking of my parents, enabling the cycle. And in her final act of love, she had not only given me her home, but also permission to break the pattern that had defined my family relationships for so long. I read the letter 3 more times, each reading strengthening my resolve. Then I sent a text message to my parents and Amanda. We need to talk, all of us, tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Grandma's house. Please be on time. My mother immediately called, but I let it go to voicemail. This conversation needed to happen in person, and I needed time to prepare. I spent the rest of the day gathering documents, records of my visits to Grandma, the FMLA paperwork from when I took leave to care for her, photos of our Sundays together over the years. I wasn't sure if I would need them, but having them made me feel more secure in my position. I also called Mr. Harrington and asked if he could send me any documentation about Grandma's decision-making process regarding the will. He was hesitant at first, but when I explained the situation, he agreed to email me his notes from their discussions, appropriately redacted for legal purposes. "Your grandmother was very clear about her wishes, Cassandra," he told me kindly. "She anticipated there might be pressure on you to change the arrangements, and she specifically asked me to support you if that happened." That night, I slept at Grandma's house, my house, for the first time since inheriting it. Lying in the guest bedroom, I wasn't ready to sleep in Grandma's room yet. I felt a sense of peace settle over me. This house held so many memories, so much love. I could almost feel Grandma's presence surrounding me, giving me strength for what was to come. The next day, I woke early and spent the morning cleaning. There was something therapeutic about washing windows and dusting shelves that had begun to gather neglect in the weeks since Grandma's passing. By the time 1:30 rolled around, the house was spotless. A vase of fresh flowers sat on the coffee table, and I felt as ready as I would ever be. My parents arrived exactly at 2 punctual as always. Amanda was 15 minutes late without Troy this time. I invited them all to sit in the living room, the formal space where Grandma had entertained guests on special occasions. "Thank you for coming," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "I know things got heated at dinner the other night, and I apologize for walking out. But I think it's important that we clear the air about this situation once and for all." "We agree," my father said, his tone making it clear he expected this meeting to end with me signing over the house. "Family disagreements should be resolved quickly. I've given this a lot of thought," I continued, "and I've come to a decision about Grandma Eleanor's house." Amanda leaned forward expectantly, a triumphant smile already forming on her lips. "I will not be signing it over to Amanda or anyone else. I will be keeping the house as Grandma intended." The smile vanished from Amanda's face. "You selfish bee." "Let me finish," I interrupted, with a firmness that surprised even me. "This isn't about being selfish. This is about respecting Grandma's wishes and breaking a pattern that hasn't been healthy for any of us." I reached into my bag and pulled out Grandma's letter. Grandma left this for me. She knew exactly what would happen after she was gone, and she wanted to make sure I had the strength to stand up for myself. I began to read the letter aloud, my voice occasionally catching on the most emotional parts, but pushing through to the end. When I finished, the room was silent. My mother was the first to speak, her voice tight with anger. "I can't believe she would write such things about her own family. This is manipulation from beyond the grave." "It's the truth, Mom," I said quietly. "And I think deep down, you know it is. The truth is that your sister needs this house more than you do," my father insisted, though I could see uncertainty in his eyes for the first time. "What Amanda needs," I said carefully, "is to learn how to stand on her own 2 feet. What she needs is for us to stop solving her problems for her and start expecting her to solve them herself." "That's easy for you to say," Amanda snapped. "You've always had everything come easy to you." I stared at her in disbelief. "Easy? You think nursing school while working part-time was easy? You think holding down a job for 7 years while you've bounced between a dozen different schemes is easy? You think watching Grandma die was easy?" "Girls, please," my mother interjected. "This isn't helping." "Actually, I think it is," I said. "For the first time, we're actually talking about the reality of our family dynamic, instead of pretending everything is fine while I give and Amanda takes." I turned to Amanda directly. "I love you. You're my sister. But Grandma was right. This isn't about keeping score or making things even. This is about respect. You haven't respected Grandma's wishes, and you haven't respected me or my relationship with her. So that's it," my father demanded. "You're choosing a house over your family. No, Dad. I'm choosing to honor Grandma's wishes and to value myself enough to stop being everyone's doormat. And if you truly see that as choosing a house over family,
then maybe we need to re-examine what family really means to all of us." My mother began to cry, which would normally have been my cue to back down, to apologize, to give in. But Grandma's words echoed in my mind. "Your compassion is your greatest strength, but when misused,
it becomes your greatest vulnerability. I'm not doing this to hurt anyone, I said more gently. But I need you all to understand that this decision is final. The house is mine, and I'm keeping it. Amanda stood abruptly, her face flushed with anger. Fine, keep your stupid house, but don't expect me to pretend everything is okay between us. As far as I'm concerned, you're not my sister anymore. She stormed out, slamming the front door behind her. My father stood more slowly. You're making a mistake, Cassandra. A family divided against itself cannot stand. I'm not dividing the family, Dad. I'm just refusing to be the only one who ever compromises. He shook his head sadly and helped my still crying mother to her feet. When you come to your senses, you know where to find us. After they left, I sat alone in Grandma's my living room, emotionally drained, but feeling lighter than I had in years. For the first time in my life, I had stood my ground against the full force of my family's manipulation. It hurt, yes, but beneath the pain was a growing sense of pride and self-respect that I realized had been missing for far too long. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. Grandma Eleanor would have been proud. 3 weeks passed without a word from my family. No calls, no texts, not even passive-aggressive social media posts from Amanda. The silence was both painful and strangely liberating. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't arranging my schedule around family obligations or fielding crisis calls from Amanda. I had space to breathe, to think, to begin settling into my new home without constant interruption. I spent weekends painting the spare bedroom a soft sage green, planting new flowers in Grandma's garden, and gradually moving my belongings from my apartment. Beth came over to help one Saturday, bringing lunch and moral support. Have you heard anything from them? She asked as we assembled a new bookshelf in what would become my home office. I shook my head, radio silence. I think they're waiting for me to break first. And will you? I considered the question seriously. Number not this time. They need to understand that things have changed. I'm not going to keep playing my assigned role in the family drama. Beth nodded approvingly. Good for you. Though I have to say Aunt Karen has been calling my mom nonstop trying to get the family to talk sense into you. Mom's been shutting it down though. Really? I was surprised. Aunt Susan had always seemed firmly in my parents' corner. Really? She told Mom that Grandma Eleanor knew exactly what she was doing with her will, and everyone should respect that. Beth smiled. I think seeing you stand up for yourself has made some people rethink the whole situation. On the 4th week of silence, I received a text from Amanda that simply read, "Can we talk? Just us." I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop downtown Neutral Territory for what I expected would be another confrontation. When I arrived, Amanda was already there, looking uncharacteristically subdued. Her usual perfectly styled hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup. She'd ordered me a vanilla latte, my favorite. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat down across from her. Of course, I replied cautiously. What's up? Amanda stared into her coffee cup for a long moment before speaking. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few weeks about what you said, about what Grandma wrote in that letter. She looked up at me, her eyes shining with unshed tears. You were right about all of it. I was so shocked I couldn't respond immediately. Troy and I broke up, she continued when I didn't speak. After the whole house thing fell through, he started pressuring me about when I was going to fix things with you. Like I should be able to manipulate you into giving me what he wanted. She gave a bitter laugh. That's when I realized you were right about him too. He didn't care about me. He just wanted what he could get from me, just like I did with Grandma. I'm sorry about Troy, I said, meaning it despite everything. She shrugged. Don't be. It made me see some things clearly for the first time. Like how I've been living my whole life, expecting other people to solve my problems. Mom and Dad, my exes, you, Grandma. I've been taking and taking without ever giving anything back. I took a sip of my latte, unsure how to respond to this unexpected vulnerability from my usually defensive sister. Anyway, Amanda continued, I got a job, a real one with benefits and everything. Administrative assistant at Valley Medical Center. It's entry level, but it's a start. And I've applied for some night classes at the community college. Amanda, that's great, I said, genuinely impressed. I also found a more affordable apartment. It's smaller, but it's in a better school district for the kids. She hesitated, then added, I used the money Grandma left me for the security deposit and first month's rent. It's the first time I've ever used money for what it was intended for instead of blowing it on something stupid. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I'm proud of you, I really am. Don't be too proud yet, she said, with a ghost of her old smile. I've got a long way to go, but I wanted you to know that I understand why you kept the house. And I'm sorry for how I reacted. You deserved that inheritance, and I had no right to try to take it from you. The simple acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes. Thank you for saying that. It means a lot. Mom and Dad are still pretty upset, Amanda admitted. But I think they're coming around slowly. Dad asked me yesterday if I'd talk to you. Really? That's surprising. I think they miss you. Amanda said they're just too stubborn to admit they were wrong. We talked for another hour more, honestly, than we had in years. About our childhood, about the patterns of favoritism and enabling that had shaped both of us in different ways. About Grandma Eleanor and the different relationships we'd each had with her. For the first time, I felt like my sister was truly seeing me. And I was seeing her not the roles we'd been assigned in our family dynamic, but the complex, flawed, real people we both were. When we parted, Amanda hugged me tightly. I don't expect us to fix everything overnight, she said, but I'd like to try to have a real relationship with you. One that's not about what I can get from you. I'd like that too, I told her, and I meant it. The following Sunday, I received a text from my mother asking if they could come over to see the house. I agreed with some trepidation. When they arrived, my father was stiff and formal, but my mother had brought a housewarming plant and made an effort to complement the changes I'd made to the decor. You've done a wonderful job with the place, she said, running her hand over the new curtains in the living room. Eleanor would have loved these. My father stood awkwardly in the center of the room, looking around as if seeing the house for the first time. Amanda tells us she started a new job, he said finally. Yes, she mentioned that when we had coffee. I think it's a great opportunity for her. He nodded still, not quite meeting my eyes. She also said that you two had a good talk. We did. I confirmed it was, and healing. My mother sat down on the couch, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Cassandra, your father and I have been doing some thinking about everything that happened with the will and what you said about our family dynamics. I sat down across from her waiting. It wasn't easy to hear, my father admitted, finally taking a seat beside my mother. No parent wants to think they've been unfair to their children or that they've contributed to difficult family patterns. But my mother continued. We've realized that there was truth in what you said. We have expected different things from you and Amanda. We have asked you to make sacrifices that we never asked of her. And my father added, clearing his throat uncomfortably, we should have respected Eleanor's wishes from the beginning. She had her reasons for leaving the house to you, and they were good ones. I felt a knot of emotion tightening in my throat. Thank you for saying that. It means a lot to me. We miss you, sweetheart, my mother said, tears welling in her eyes. I know things can't go back to exactly how they were before. Maybe they shouldn't, but we'd like to try to build something better if you're willing. I crossed the room and sat between them on the couch, taking one of each of their hands in mine. I'm willing, I said softly. It won't be easy, and there will probably be setbacks, but I'd like to try to. My father squeezed my hand, a gesture of affection that had become rare as I'd grown into adulthood. Your grandmother would be proud of you, he said gruffly. She raised a strong woman. She did, I agreed, looking around the room filled with memories of her. And I think she'd be proud of all of us right now for trying to do better. As they were leaving, my mother paused at the door. We thought perhaps we could have Sunday dinner here next week. Amanda and the children too. Start a new tradition in your new home. I'd like that, I said, surprised by how much I meant it. After they left, I walked through the rooms of my house, truly feeling it as mine for the first time. In the months since Grandma's passing, I had moved through grief, anger, determination, and now tentatively toward healing. The house that had caused so much family strife was becoming what I thought Grandma had always intended it to be. Not just a physical structure to be passed down, but a place where new beginnings were possible, where old wounds could begin to heal, and where love could continue to grow in new and healthier ways. 6 months passed, and with each day, I grew more comfortable in my role as the owner of Grandma Eleanor's house. What had once felt like an overwhelming responsibility now felt like a precious gift. I had repainted several rooms, updated the kitchen with new appliances, and turned the smallest bedroom into a cozy home office where I could work on my newly started blog about nursing and caregiving. The garden became my sanctuary. I planted all of Grandma's favorites: hydrangeas, roses, lilacs, but also added my own touches with a vegetable patch and a small meditation area with a stone bench under the old maple tree. Working with my hands in the soil became therapeutic, a way to process my thoughts and emotions while creating something beautiful. The first weeks after the confrontation with my family had been difficult. Despite our tentative reconciliation, there were awkward moments and old habits that resurfaced. My mother occasionally slipped into guilt tripping, and my father still had a tendency to dismiss my opinions. But unlike before, I now gently called out these behaviors when they happened. "Mom, that sounds like you're trying to make me feel guilty about my decision," I would say calmly. Or, "Dad, I've thought this through carefully, and I'd appreciate you considering my perspective." It wasn't always well received, but slowly, incrementally, things began to change. My parents started to catch themselves to recognize the patterns that had become so ingrained in our family dynamic. They didn't always succeed, but they were trying, and that meant everything. My relationship with Amanda transformed the most dramatically, without the competitive dynamic that had defined us for so long. We began to discover each other as adults, as women with our own strengths and weaknesses, dreams and fears. Amanda stuck with her job at Valley Medical Center and was promoted to department coordinator. After 4 months, she completed a certificate program in medical office management and was talking about eventually pursuing an associate's degree. She remained single, focusing on her children and her own growth instead of jumping into another relationship. One Tuesday evening, she called me in tears. "I just paid off my first credit card," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "The whole balance. I've never done that before in my life." "Amanda, that's amazing," I exclaimed, genuinely proud of her. "It's just one of 3, she admitted, "but it's a start. I made a plan like Grandma wanted me to, and I'm sticking to it." I thought of Grandma's letter of her offer to help Amanda if she would take steps toward financial responsibility. "Grandma would be so proud of you right now." I told her, "I wish I had listened to her when she was alive," Amanda said quietly. "I missed out on so much by being selfish and short-sighted. We can't change the past," I reminded her gently. "But you're honoring her memory now by making these changes." As I had promised at our reconciliation, I didn't give Amanda the house, but I found other ways to support her journey toward independence. I helped her create a budget, connected her with a financial literacy program at the local credit union, and occasionally watched the kids when she needed to study or work late. The children became regular visitors at my house. Lily loved helping me in the garden. Jaden was fascinated by the old model train set I'd found in the attic, and little Mason would toddle around the backyard chasing butterflies. I established a college fund for each of them, with a portion of the money Grandma had left me, something I knew she would have wanted. The Sunday dinners my mother had suggested became a tradition. Sometimes we gathered at my house, sometimes at my parents' place, occasionally at Amanda's apartment when she wanted to show off a new skill she'd learned in her cooking class. These meals weren't always perfect. Old tensions occasionally resurfaced, and we were all still learning how to communicate in healthier ways. But they were genuine in a way our family interactions had never been before. 3 particularly meaningful changes occurred during this period of healing. The first was a scholarship I established in Grandma Eleanor's name at the local community college, specifically for single parents returning to education. The first recipient was a 35-year-old mother of 2 who was studying to become a dental hygienist after leaving an abusive relationship. "Your grandmother's legacy is going to change lives," the college administrator told me at the scholarship ceremony. "That's a beautiful tribute to her memory." The second change was my decision to host a small gathering on what would have been Grandma's 85th birthday. We planted a magnolia tree in the backyard, her favorite flowering tree, and each family member shared a memory of her. Even Amanda had stories to tell, memories from her childhood, before she had become so self-absorbed. "Remember how she always kept butterscotch candies in her purse," Amanda recalled, smiling through tears, "and she'd slip them to us during church when Mom wasn't looking." These shared memories helped us all reconnect, not just with each other, but with the woman who had brought us together even after she was gone. The third and perhaps most significant change was in myself. Living in Grandma's house, surrounded by reminders of her wisdom and love, I gradually learned to set and maintain healthy boundaries without guilt. I became more selective about when and how I helped others, ensuring that my assistance empowered rather than enabled. I started dating again after years of putting my personal life on hold, meeting a kind pediatrician named David, who appreciated my independence and strength. Most importantly, I developed a deeper understanding of what family truly means. It isn't about blind loyalty or endless sacrifice. It isn't about keeping score or meeting arbitrary expectations. True family means supporting each other's growth, respecting each other's boundaries, and loving each other enough to be honest, even when it's difficult. One evening, as I sat on the porch swing that had been Grandma's favorite spot, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been tears and anger, broken relationships, and painful truths. But through it all, Grandma Eleanor's final gift had not been the house itself, but the courage to value myself enough to stand firm in my convictions. "Thank you, Grandma," I whispered to the gentle evening breeze, "for everything." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, I thought about how life's most valuable inheritances aren't always physical possessions. Sometimes they're the lessons we learn from those who love us best. Sometimes they're the strength we discover within ourselves when faced with difficult choices. And sometimes they're the wisdom to know that true love for others and for ourselves requires both compassion and boundaries. Grandma Eleanor had known that all along. In her final act of love, she had given me not just a house, but a home within myself that no one could ever take away. Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure to do what you knew was right? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to set boundaries with family. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is having the courage to honor your own worth.